I've been taking math and science courses since I was in middle and high school. So that's kind of the basis of, can I call that the basis of my engineering career? And my father had a small business selling software as a service to career coaches, or selling software designed for career coaches to business owners, and eventually generalizing to business owners who are looking to grow. I went to college planning on going into electrical engineering. I remember going into a career fair. Well, I remember having a career fair in high school and electrical engineering being one of the career paths that seemed like it was in line with interests. In high school, your interests and proficiencies somewhat align when you can choose your courses, also when you are motivated to do things that you're good at or discover things that you can become more skilled at. So I had been on the math and science path kind of anyway, and electrical engineering seemed interesting. Also, I was curious about how transistors worked. So I went to college with an idea that careers were a thing that were destined to you based on career assessments. And I planned on progressing through college, motivated to learn how transistors worked. Cheers. In freshman year of college, one of my friends brought me along to a competitive coding club. There, I learned a lot about optimization. I learned that it was possible to care about the reasons that your code was structured because of its performance. When I was growing up, I used to think all of the adults in my family communicated the same way. Now I'm an adult in my family, and I don't communicate with all of my family members at all. And also, we have different reasons to believe different things about what's possible. The university system is pretty similar. There are conferences where people who write papers talk about what they've written, and other kinds of meta academic conferences where there are discussions about the reasons dynamics exist the ways they do. Some about funding, some with government officials. Even as coordination theoretically improves, there are going to be fundamental limitations with where information can be about which dynamics in a distributed system. And university systems are like this. This is to say that universities understand they won't be able to predict which jobs are going to be relevant in the future. No one has been able to predict the trajectory of AI, and we've been able to automate many dimensions of work. For example, from a probability of risk perspective, it makes more sense for a university to invest in the concept of clusters of understanding. So, universities will often invest in schools, and there are discussions about legacy families, though this is more cultural in the family context than specifically university contexts. And culturally, different families have done different things with their money and names. In the US, if it's likely that you'll go home every so often and have conversations with people who can recall the reasons why they enjoyed attending your university, you might notice those dimensions. If you have positive things that you remember about college, you might be more likely to contribute to its longevity. If more people contribute to the longevity of their college or university, their college or university will be more likely to continue. Some families don't care about preserving the reasons that they have valued their educations, and most coincidentally do. My major in college was learning and education studies with a concentration in applied learning science. And in my courses, I remember an acronym that I haven't been able to find other places. that was professionalism, academia, and I think it was social life. I think I remember professional, social, and academic. When you attend university, or when someone attends university, they often attend to get a job, to further their academic credentialing, or to develop their social network. Often, and if you're aware of this, especially, you can do all three. I think I learned this in my third or fourth year of college, and I was working on a student organization called Student Body for Meaningful Education, because originally I felt like a lot of the structure of education was meaningless. Education is structured so you remember the parts that you do, and you're supposed to have enough connections with peers that you can extend your memory about familiar environments. You, as an individual, exist with unique identity, and that is the way that education individuates. Also, there can be more attention flowing towards education and caring about the projects that we're actively developing. I can reflect on what I experienced learning about engineering and being prepared for leadership when that resulted in, well, I think that we can distribute our preparation for leadership more mindfully. And also, we can create open source development cultures. It is possible to build projects and discuss why they theoretically would work in specific ways, how we can relate to them, what we were trying to learn when we were doing our experiment. Anyway, cheers. Software engineers can pretty easily create fake job portals, and one way that we can have this not entirely stop the economy if it does happen is to change the ways we hire people, which isn't ideal because there are a lot of reasons why remote work reduces inequality, for example, or it can reduce inequality, though there are a lot of caveats, and the timing of when industries automate which dimensions of which structures of what they can train. There are logistics challenges to all of this. With modern AI, presumably a software engineer who is skilled enough can create enough personas to do whatever with whatever. So, structurally, we need to hire software engineers to incentivize them to focus on different problems. And for the most part, this wouldn't be because software engineers would maliciously clog the hiring processes. It's because software engineers recognize a shape of a problem and want to create more efficient hiring processes, which might be tempting. And if enough do this, then there won't be more standardization. Standardization can be good for hiring in some contexts. Currently, Workday is being sued for discrimination, so there are limitations to standardization. Also, some companies won't hire for some roles, either intentionally or successfully, through some hiring portals. This is what I've run into. My personality is confusing often because the context of how I grew up with my peers is different than what people expect often. So my social patterns are slightly different often than what people expect when they're hiring, and the initial interview processes can be difficult to get through without specific energy. There are other ways that companies hire. They are often based on rapport. When I have energy at night, I can have those shapes of conversations if the thing that I'm doing is conducive for that to be very convenient. Beyond that, it's like, would you play a video game if all of the buttons were 1 or 2 seconds slower? Also, it's 1 or 2 seconds. It's not specifically a 2 second lag all the time. The answer is no. There's a lot of work that goes into playtesting video games, and the preferences people have can be surprisingly granular. So the timing of interactions across the employment sector, it's relevant. That's why I'm pointing to TikTok and describing a shape of content that I can produce. I've been telling the story of lore.land for a while on TikTok. I can point to that and now tell the story of all of the projects that I've worked on since. The eccentric creatives I've met, the talented innovators. I don't have a list of personalities worked out. Is it eccentric, genius, talented, innovative, whatever? What's the list? I want to speak highly of the people who I've worked with and the people who I've tried to work with. Anyway, I think that we can hire people through TikTok because we can work in public on TikTok. I can post this video and then download it with a watermark and then post that video to YouTube and then share the link. On YouTube, there can be a transcript. I think TikTok does that for some contexts as well. I made a 30-minute video yesterday and uploaded that to YouTube today. 30-minute stitch of TikToks that I made yesterday, July 10th. I'm planning on making some content about the recent AI models and also going live and just moseying through how I can make a video that might be engaging, might describe what's possible. There are different things that the AI models are trying to do, that the different companies are trying to be skilled at uniquely. Different ways they can integrate into your workflow, and benefits to having access to multiple at the same time, or knowing someone who can work with multiple at the same time. In other words, there are new reasons to relate to modern workflows. And with that, there will be emerging careers. So that's worth talking about because that's what everyone's wondering about. In the meantime, may you please tip me? Call it a donation if you want to. I'll have to figure that out with my taxes later. I don't get paid unless my audience pays me or people who I work with pay me. And I like the idea of being able to send people invoices for labor, but that often makes it more difficult to get work from them. If there's a project that we're working on together and suddenly I make money a requirement, sometimes that makes people freeze and our mutual work no longer is mutually available. So I do like the idea of more people paying me. And you can subscribe to my Patreon. In the meantime, I really do appreciate tips. PayPal, Cash App, and Venmo. Same handle as my CapCut. Cheers. I attended a research-oriented university, and I appreciate this, but I can't expect other people to have had similar experiences. I dropped out of college, and I also would like to attend college again. The point of dropping out of college wasn't primarily to disparage the concept of degrees, because I recognized that degrees were the best way to demonstrate proficiency in some lines of work. Perhaps not theoretically, perhaps only historically. My plans for immediately after college were to support my student organization and become a software engineer. I did become a software engineer, though I moved cities. The ethos of my student organization lives on. Cheers. It's pretty hard to keep track of the things that we only do because they're convenient enough, and making more things more convenient doesn't make this easier. It's important to note that convenience isn't evenly distributed, and different people are going to have different abilities. It kind of seems like you should be able to say something once on the internet, and that is kind of the case, but that isn't the social environment that we want. Because it's easy to make mistakes, and we don't want our mistakes to speak for our intent. An alternative kind of feels like a lot of repetition, though the dimensions that we choose to repeat might be the ones that we practice. And over time, the ways that we describe our relationship to freshness might be integrated with our history of demonstrated effort. Cheers. Hire me for marketing. Oh, web development also works. Software engineering, general media production. Professionally, I've been a software engineer for 15 years, and the software engineering career is a challenge of minding expectation. Now we have new tools that are specifically useful for the software engineering context, and I've spent a lot of time on Book Talk, other talks, been around TikTok, and I've learned the ways that people want to interact with technology. Not all of them, mind you. I don't know how you want to interact with technology, for example, but I have learned lots of ways that we can explore the modern tech stack. And I'm going to be talking about it anyway. So, while millions of people pursue this software engineering career, and I have had multiple jobs as a software engineer, I've gotten multiple developers hired. While I produce media anyway and develop my style, hire me for marketing and make use of some of my momentum. Cheers. When I dropped out of college, I was running a student organization that I had founded, and I had a job working for the university, and I couldn't do either without being a student. So dropping out of school did come with sacrifices anyway, and also it wasn't a decision that my father especially approved of. He verbalized a requirement that I would need to pay back the Parent Plus loans, which changed the shape of the jobs that I took or pursued. College loans are meant to be an amount of money that a family can understand and incentivize. If the loans can't be made worthwhile within a family context, college often isn't pursued. Or scholarships are emphasized more specifically, or extracurriculars are, or legacy admissions are a channel. As a society, there isn't one person who's going to tell you specifically the best way to optimize all of your career points. There might have been people in your life at various times who have suggested that they knew specifically what you would want for longer stretches of your life. Different sources of wisdom can be relevant at different times, and different sources of information can be misleading for different reasons at different times. Professionally, I've been a software engineer kind of to adapt to changing language understanding. Software engineers need to learn the latest frameworks and libraries. Well, that's been the case. I'm not sure what the case is now. I'm not entirely sure what the base level of necessity is for software engineers. I can also say that having experience as a software engineer makes it easier to approach other disciplines, though rapport and, well, there are a lot of dimensions that might make it easier or more difficult to pivot into other careers. I've made 10,000 videos on TikTok that are stitchable. TikTok can suggest that or show that somehow. There are also other achievements, and making videos can describe the ways that I approach the world. Going to college gave me an opportunity to illustrate the ways that I prioritize and approach problem solving. My time since college has given me opportunities to practice. Cheers. Every career is going to approach metacognition differently, so that's where you can find your edge, which is like more of a perimeter edge It isn't that we're all competing with each other, it's that we're in a circle and there is a perimeter, but the circle is actually a hexagon. Polygon, it's an infinitely sided polygon, and your edge is the part of the polygon that represents your angle. How you think about thinking, like the ways that you consider assorting your tasks into various shapes and sizes. Why do you choose one language model over another for any particular task? You can describe that and you can make videos about it. You don't need to describe that verbatim. You can reflect on it and make videos between your tasks. Presumably, if we're all doing the same thing of making videos and also thinking about thinking, we're going to develop unique voices and brands anyway. This is the reason why TikTokers should consider having a career that isn't only TikTok. So there's something you can talk about and something you can think about thinking about between your videos. Cheers.